Hey everyone, it's been a while since I saw you on a live stream, but this is a special occasion because, as most of you probably know, I had my second MMA fight. And spoiler alert, I give you 5 seconds if you want to turn off. And if you haven't watched the fight, you don't know the results, you want to see it first, go do that right now. It's not a long fight. But spoiler alert, I've lost. Now, this is the second time I lose an amateur MMA fight, which, if you watch the video or have been fighting yourself, you probably know that it's a big blow. It's a difficult situation to digest. But there's been a lot going on before the fight, during the fight, and now after comments, and also digesting the whole situation, coming to conclusions, figuring things out, learning lessons. So there's quite a bit to discuss, and I'll do my best to give you some insights about the details, the behind the scenes stuff of the fight, and also answer your questions, primarily starting off with everything related to the fight, my current situation and state, and also my future and quote unquote fighting career. So actually, there are already a few questions, and maybe I'll start with them and see if I can jump back and forth between the backstory of the fight and the behind the scenes stuff of the fight, and then come back to your questions. But just to put it out there, there's a chat session. I'm gonna go through it constantly. If you want to ask some questions, write it down. I'll do my best to go through as many questions as possible. There may be a lot. I won't be able to tackle all of them, but I'll do my best. But if you really want to make sure that I get your question, there is an option of super chat. Uh, Check that out, and then your questions will pop up, and I'll definitely read them. But let's start with what's already there. So, actually, I have this cool feature. I can show you the comment. So, Nicolas Messina, fantastic job in your fight. I get it didn't go your way, but you look good and comfortable on the feet. Just a few things to sharpen up, and you'll be fine. Thank you, Nicholas. So far, that's not a question, but I just wanted to say I really appreciate the positive support from all of you. As I said, not everyone may have had the experience of losing a fight, but it's a tough experience. The thing is, you're preparing for months upon months, and I traveled to Sweden for this. I had to go for an injury and worked my ass off. And then you come in, and 2 minutes later, you did not get the result you wanted. That's not easy. But we'll get back to that and talk. But I wanted to say that getting your positive comments and support does help me a lot. So thank you, Nicholas. I also see you seem like an accomplished fighter from your picture, so that's cool. And I think now there's the question. So have you ever considered, as opposed to jumping into full contact cage fights, to maybe just get your feet wet with some IKF PKP tournaments? They're really good for experience. So I'll start off by saying I'm not sure what the letters stand for. Haven't bumped into it yet, but I imagine it's probably not full contact, maybe kickboxing, or maybe even karate. These are only my guesses, but I have a feeling of what you may be referring to, and that would be great. I mean, I'd love to have some experience in kind of non-full contact, no ground and pound tournament, because I one of my big realizations after this fight is that I do lack tournament experience, competitive experience. I've been to four jiu-jitsu tournaments, but that was already like 3 years ago. And I went in as a newbie. I barely knew any jiu-jitsu, but I was like, I need to get experience. So I went there. Didn't have much success because I was so fresh and new. But then eventually stopped doing that. And besides that, I was never really into sports. I was into martial arts. I did Aikido. Aikido, there's no competition there. It's super calm and chill, very philosophical. So I didn't go to like basketball tournaments or football tournaments or any type of tournaments. And I think that gets to me. I'm pretty good at dealing with my mind and my emotions. I was in a really good state at the beginning of the fight, but still, I think just getting more competitive experience to begin with may help me ease into the fight itself easier, and not have such a big adrenaline dump, and also too get some more fighting experience, which is a level up beyond regular sparring, I think I missed that, and I actually even regret not having a hard sparring match before getting into a fight. I was only doing light sparring, and when I was training at SBG Ireland with Coach John Kavanagh, they would usually do only light sparring, but just before the fight, like a week or 2 weeks before the fight, they would have a like a simulation of a fight, like an 80% hard sparring in a cage. And I think that would have been good for me to kind of get punched in my face again, because I think, to be honest, yeah, that did get me off guard. You know, it wasn't like painful or something, but once I got punched, I was like, oh, okay, I haven't been punched like properly for a while, and I think it would have been good to wet my feet that way too. And just again, competitive experience, just getting used to competition, adversity, the adrenaline, opponents which are not playing around. Yes. So my current goal is to compete as much as I can. I still need to fix my spine injury, essentially the pinched nerve. I'm lying down right now because it's hard for me to sit. It's painful, not too bad, but it bugs me. I can't train, definitely not wrestling. But once I'll be back on feet, I'm considering maybe doing some boxing tournaments, kickboxing tournaments, jiu-jitsu tournaments, just going to tournaments, and not necessarily to win, but just putting myself through it so I would get used to it, and then eventually I could kick ass where it matters. So yeah, long answer to a short question, but I think that was a nice thing to look at. So next question, RW Vids. What is your end game? Do you want to be an MMA champion, just fight to prove something to yourself, or build up credentials to open your own school? So that's a question I get a lot, and I figure why, because I guess you have to have a reason to step into the fucking cage. That's such a crazy experience to have, and you're risking your health, and it's just such an adrenaline dump. There's so much nerves involved, and well, it's a tough thing to do. So somebody, no one probably would just go there without a good reason, or without a reason good enough for them. And my reason, MMA champion, no. I had to face the fact that I started late, and I don't imagine that I would be able to become an MMA champion, especially not a professional. And that's not my goal. Maybe, of course, it would be cool to have like a amateur title somewhere somehow, but that's even not that is not necessarily my goal. My goal is personal. So that also disregards the build up credentials to open up your own school. No, not really. I burnt myself out from teaching when I used to do Aikido, and I don't feel I'm qualified and won't be qualified in mixed martial arts for a long time to teach. My standards are really high that I put to myself. So no, opening a school is also not the gig. Prove something to myself? Essentially, yes. Overcome my fears, overcome my limitations. And it's not only just proving something to myself, it's just overcoming my limitations, putting myself out there. Uh, Going to fight in MMA is still a stressful experience for me. I guess it will always be, but I feel I want to do it as long as I need to, until I will feel comfortable doing it, and I will stop doing it, not because, oh my God, I lost, and I'm so sad and that's why I stopped, but I would like to stop once I would feel like, okay, I can do this. I'm actually pretty good at this, but I had enough. I want to stop as a kind of a feeling like I won the internal battle versus lost, if that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. Okay, let's see what else we have. Um, So, Rokas, have you thought about the idea that you're simply not a fighter and it's not in your DNA? You don't have that killer instinct. Your path lay elsewhere. Nothing wrong with that. So this is a comment I really hate, to be honest. Like there's a minority of people tell me I'm not a fighter, yada yada yada. Uh, it bugs me. Maybe there's some deeper reason why that bugs me, but I really dislike that concept, that idea that some people are not fighters, and that's kind of like, it seems to me like a scapegoat. It's like, oh, you're not a fighter, so don't even worry about it. I don't believe that. I don't think that's true. I know stories of people who were nothing like fighters. Like I met a fighter coach in Muay Thai. in Tiger Muay Thai in Phuket when I was this December. I was training for a week in Tiger Muay Thai in Thailand, and I met the coach who was overweight, a pro gamer, had nothing to do with fighting, and then went on a path and became one and kicked ass and had like 50 fights, knocked out like 40 opponents. Uh, Matt, if you're watching this by any chance, that's his name. You're really cool. So yeah, and it's like everybody would have said to him like, "Oh, you're not a fighter." I'm sure many people told him that, but I don't believe that's true. I don't think it's in the DNA. And Arquest 100, whoever you are, I almost bet that 90% of people who write this comment, they are not fighters themselves. They haven't been to the cage, they haven't competed, and they just have this silly idea that there are fighters and there are non-fighters. In the end, it's skills and yeah, mentality. Of course, you have to have some mentality, but the fact that somebody is willing to step into the fucking cage, that makes you a fighter already. And to say that it's either in your DNA or not in your DNA, again, I think that's silly. Like we have fighters. Like I met Bill Superfoot Wallace, one of the best kickboxers in the history, legendary. He told me he was afraid to fight every time. He did not want to fight. He never wanted to compete, but he just did it, and he was undefeated. He was amazing, but he was scared as hell to fight. So what the fuck? Like how do you did he have fighter's DNA if he was always afraid to fight and he didn't want to fight? That sounds like the opposite of fighter's DNA, but he was the best. GSP apparently would vomit before his fight. So there's just so many holes in that theory that some people are fighters and not fighters. That just kind of makes me a bit upset. So, but thank you for bringing that up. I did want to rant about that. Um, oh, that's funny. Okay, so this is not a question, but I'll fight you so you can get your first win, Tony B. That's kind of funny. Thank you. That's nice of you, but obviously I would want to win properly. Uh, okay. Well, as I'm looking for questions, I will just pop up some comments. Rockstar South, the reaction post fight was perfect. He added, "Thank you." And I will admit, I can actually comment on that. Just as I said, like I mentioned that in the video. Obviously, there was much more going on. The video is fairly short. I couldn't put everything in there. I didn't want to make the video cumbersome. But as soon as I realized I tapped out, I lost. That was not a nice moment. Now you can see me sitting there for a little bit. I was thinking like, I lost and I fucking prepared so much, so hard. Sorry for swearing. If anybody's bugged with that, it just was not a nice place to be in. It took me a while actually. So once I went out of the cage, uh, I was spinning that thought again and again, and my instinct was go see my coach, ask him, okay, so what did I do wrong? I always ask for feedback. But once we talked, I just went outside half naked. It was pretty cold, but I didn't care. You know, the adrenaline was there. I was warm from the whole thing. And I just sat there and I was thinking, yeah. And that's why actually when I literally started thinking, man, maybe this is, not for me. Maybe this is a sign that I'm just not meant for that. And so that whole, oh, I'm gonna do better next time, this is amazing, that was not my first instinct. And I think probably barely ever would have that first instinct. It took me a while to kind of gather up myself, and then I was like, you know what, okay, let's make the best out of this. And then I met my opponent. I was like, hey man, okay, do you have a few minutes? We stood there, we talked. Turns out his kid did Aikido in the past. He knew me from my channel and he analyzed my fights. Fuck, he knew my way I'm fighting. Obviously, not necessarily the deal breaker or game changer, but still. Anyway, we spoke. I asked him for feedback. Went to his coach. Went to like everyone who was just willing to talk to me. I asked everyone, and then as I listened to everyone, and they were encouraging me, and they were telling me like, you know what, losing, it doesn't matter. You did good, and it's all about experience. And then just hearing that again and again and again, that started to let me think, because that's aligned with my perspective. As a person, I do like to see the good and the bad. Uh, but it wasn't easy. It took me took me time, and I did feel down for a while. But then little by little, I kept thinking about it. I kept thinking about what everybody told me, and the more I listened to people, the more I thought about the whole thing, the more I realized, okay, this is not the end of the world. I'm not gonna give up. There's only one way, and it's forward. And then I released the video. Also got a lot of positive support from all of you guys. Thank you for that. It means a lot to me. And it's also, I don't think it was, you know, I don't know what's the right phrase. Like, I don't think it was just people being nice to me because of the fact of being nice. I think a lot of people are honest. And also, people gave me feedback and said, that you did this wrong, you did that wrong. But overall, it sounds like, I wasn't necessarily terrible. And hearing that also encouraged me to think, okay, maybe just things didn't align to me. There are definitely things which are still flawed in my game. There's so much I want to work on right now. Just want to jump back into training, and I can't because of the injury, which makes things hard. But I'm ready watching like fight analysis and breakdowns of strategies and head movement and yada yada. Yeah, I just want to move forward. So anyway, long story short, uh, my reaction, my mindset, I have to admit, it wasn't like straight like that, like, oh, suddenly I'm super happy. Uh, it took me some time and effort, but I got there. I'm still getting there. So yeah, I guess just something I wanted to share. Okay. Well, there's a simple question from Christian Lafuente. Did I get tested before the fight? No, actually, there were no tests. This was the amateur fight. There was B category and A category. B is without ground and pound. A is with and free rounds. Those guys were tested. We didn't. So I could have probably just put some testosterone or whatever you put into your system, but no, I didn't. But I wasn't tested either. Am I going to be fighting again? Yes, that's the plan as much as I can. But probably most of you know that already. Leo B, do you think you got overconfident when they said your opponent had less experience than you? 100%. Fuck. there's there's still a desire in me to swear about some things. I think that's because I'm like, because that's what happened. So yes, Leo, thank you for pointing that out. I did mention that slightly in the video. I was actually thinking about when I make a video, I write a script so it would be it would flow well, and I thought about putting more emphasis on that, and I just barely mentioned. I was like, oh yeah, somebody told me it was less experience, but actually that was a big part of the story. I just didn't want to make the video too long. I didn't have the motivation to work on a video much when I have an injury, and I wasn't in the most uplifted mood. But the fact is, yes, that actually got to me. I think that's one of the big downfalls that I took, because I was told that my opponent is kind of like much less experienced. And I was like, oh, great. So that means I'll probably outstrike that person, and probably means I'll be much better on the ground. So I went in confident, and once we started exchanging strikes and I got clipped a couple of times, I was like, damn, that doesn't feel like much less experienced. And I think that started to get to me. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna take him to the ground. Surely he'll suck there. But actually now I realize, well, okay, my jiu-jitsu I think is decent. Groundwork, rolling on the ground, and so on and so forth. But then what I didn't kind of think about during the fight is that my wrestling isn't that good. I go to jiu-jitsu school, which is focused a lot on the ground. There's no cage work almost entirely. And I knew that before, but I just kind of didn't think that much about it. I thought, I can still take guys down, like, white belts and beginner blue belts. But that didn't occur to me then. And I was like, oh, I'm going to take that person down. And I drew him to the cage, which is not my strong suit, expecting that I'll just dominate. And he got that arm in. And who knows what would have happened if that arm wouldn't have snuck in there. Maybe I would have shown my jiu-jitsu skills better. But the fact is, I didn't. And yeah, so I think all in all, that's a huge mistake. I think I am hoping that never again I will underestimate my opponent, and I'm having the consideration that from now on, every person I will fight, I will consider that they're probably so good. Even if people will tell me like, "Oh, he sucks," I'm like, "Nah, he's a beast," and I have to deal with him as best as I can. So yeah, that was a mistake. And crazy enough, that's a mistake I did twice. I did the same for my first fight. I underestimated my opponent, and yeah, well, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Something like that. Shame on me for that. But you live, you learn. You T, good to see you, man. What was going through your mind when stepping into the ring? You know, a number of um feelings went through my mind. Actually, let me quickly check something. Okay, I think I'm good. For some reason, sorry guys, I'm just checking. For some reason, I'm not seeing the sponsored comments pop up at the top, or at least there's one. Anyway, I'll get to them. Okay, so let's get back to the question. So a lot of things were going through my mind as I was preparing. So it didn't start just, before stepping into the ring. You're warming up in the kind of locker room, whatever you call that, in the prep area. And then I was uh, waiting to be invited to the cage, like at the side area. And I was going through a lot of mental stuff through during that time. I think everybody does. Like you could see like somebody's like talking to everyone, somebody's like in themselves and walking around and pacing, somebody's just moving all the time, somebody's sleeping. Like everyone deals with that in a different way. And I was bouncing through a number of kind of feelings. And one of them was being nervous and afraid because I'm like, oh, I don't want to lose again. I hope I'm gonna win. Is this maybe this guy is better than I think? Like having these doubts. But I didn't want to step into the cage feeling like that. So the next part, I would consider, you know what? But this is a test. This is a challenge. Like this is something I learned in Spear, a self-defense system on how to deal with fear, is to see the thing as not a threat, but as a challenge. And that helps a lot. And I was like, you know what? This is not a threat. This is a challenge. And this is an opportunity to prove uh, everything I learn and to show and to test myself. And the other person is not my necessarily enemy. He's there as well, and we're both here to test ourselves. And this is exciting. Actually, this is an awesome opportunity. And I kept jumping back between the two thoughts. And eventually, I feel that um, I was able to stick to the second one, to the excitement. I went into the cage and I was like, you know what, this is exciting. This is gonna be fun. We're gonna test ourselves and I can have a chance to show what I learned. And that's what I was in my mind. That's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, let's do this. I was pumped. Obviously, there was the adrenaline. Ah, well, lost nevertheless. But that's the question. That's the answer to the question. That's what was on my mind. Again, I'll do my best to focus on questions, but as I'm looking for questions, I'll just quickly look for some comments. Keith Rogers, I'm proud of you. You did great. Life's about experiences. You're sure getting your share as long as you learn something, that's all that counts. I'm sure you know this. Thank you. Nah, the more I think about it, the more I start to think like that. It was difficult to think about that way at the beginning, but I think that way as well. And thank you. Uh, okay. Question, Alex Phage. Hi, Orcus. How do you feel right now? So there's the physical and there's the emotional. Physically, I'm doing okay. I know probably you're asking emotionally, but I'll start by physical. My foot is still half numb. There's a pain which bugs me and disturbs my sleep. That's the part which sucks. But obviously, even my overall though, my brain is still processing this whole thing, and I wake up in the middle of the night thinking like, maybe I should have, turned my angle there, or had to use my jab more. What if I haven't done this? Maybe I should watch some more videos, or maybe I should start training more boxing. There's so many thoughts just going through my head, so I'm still digesting that. But yeah, the pain is still there. I think it's subsiding slowly. I'm not necessarily once I came back from the fight, before the fight, I was super cautious to make sure that I, don't make my injury worse. And it kept getting better. After the fight, I was like, I don't give a fuck. Like this injury, who cares about that? So the next day, I went out for a beer with a friend to kind of cry on his shoulder. And well, obviously, I wasn't crying, but just to kind of talk about the experience. And I was sitting there and I could feel the pain. I was like, you know what? This is just going to go away by itself anyway. And the next day, I'm like, oh man, it feels worse now. Then there's one day I wanted to train, you know, to do some bicycle work. And I was like, this is going to be fine. And today I'm like, man, it's sore. It's painful again. So I think I have to start respecting my injury again more. Uh, Last comment on the physical sense. After the fight, I felt pretty good. Like after my first fight, I felt terrible. I was vomiting. You may know this story, I mean not, but the fact is, I was vomiting the whole night. I was puking blood. The 10-hour drive after the next day of my first fight, I was puking every 30 minutes. It sucked. And, I was tired, exhausted, I think for a number of reasons, which I'm not going to go into right now. But I felt really bad. After this fight, 20 minutes later, I was like, can we fight again? Can I go to the cage again? Can we do this again? Like I had plenty of energy left still. And so the next day, I was talking to a friend of mine where I said I went for a beer, and I felt like he was like, so how was it yesterday? I'm like, yesterday? What do you mean yesterday? I was like, fuck, yeah, that was yesterday. The fight was yesterday and didn't feel like it. So yeah, that's kind of over. Emotionally though, which is probably the most important part. Well, you can hear my sigh. I'm getting better. Uh, at the beginning, it was really tough, just kind of accepting the fact, facing it, and then, kind of telling everyone and letting them know that I lost. I felt like I disappointed people and I disappointed myself. So that was hard. But then slowly people would encourage me and say it's fine. They would remind me that this is just the beginning and this is not the end. And hearing that helped me a lot, and then slowly started to believe that in myself as well. Started to consider my mistakes. What should I change? How should I change my training? There's a lot of thoughts I have about how I will change my training from now on, what I will focus on more, etc. And the more I think about that, the more I have a game plan, the better I feel. Then I released the video yesterday, and I received a lot of support and positivity from people. And with that, that helped me out a lot as well, to kind of settle in and accept it and focus more on the future than the past. And so I'm still kind of in between. There's some sadness, and I walk around kind of upset and agitated. Like I went to the store today to buy some milk and cereal because I don't feel inspired to cook. And I'm like walking. I realize I'm walking like this. I'm like, fuck, fuck. There's part of me which is still upset. There's part of me which is still dealing with it. But other times I'm like, I start to feel like, okay, I watched some videos of fight analysis, of looking at how can I fix my mistakes, and then I'm like, okay, this is good. This is actually, I think actually now as I'm talking about it, I think part of me is starting to realize that this is actually good for me. As crazy as it sounds, because if I would have won, and this you could say like this is forced positivity. I don't necessarily think that. I try to be really honest, not only with others, but with myself as well. And I feel like honestly, I'm starting to find and discover this thought where I'm like, you know what, actually, there's so many things I'm about to change and do differently. And if you want to know what, because it's cool and exciting, ask me and I'll tell you. But there's so many things I will change because of the loss, that in a way it turned out good for me. And if I would have won, I probably would have changed some things, but I probably would have done the same things again, because I would think, okay, that gave me a win, but that means I can continue doing more or less the same thing, just tweak a few things. And now I'm like, no, I want to change so many things. I want to approach this on a whole new different way. Well, I'll leave some things the same way, but there's so many things I want to do differently, and that's because I lost. So anyway, I'm starting to consider that, yeah, maybe actually, as crazy as that sounds, maybe it's good that I lost, because it's bringing me up to a different level. But obviously, I need to prove that with my work and training. So yeah, long answer. Okay, let's see. I'm scanning through all the positive comments and looking for questions. Thank you for the positive comments too, though, everyone. I appreciate it. Amit, in what direction is your journey taking you? Is it to be a good fighter or specifically to later discover the combat aspect in Aikido? Um, well, I do want to become much more of a better fighter. That's definitely something I am passionate about these days. I feel there's so many lessons I still want to learn, so many obstacles I still want to conquer. So that's gonna be a big priority for me for a while right now. Just focus on becoming as good as a fighter as I can be. Combat aspects of Aikido, I consider that more my hobby than kind of like a calling or passion. I'm planning to look into that. Maybe if I'll go to the States this year, it's one of my item lists to do. I would go to visit some experts who are good at combat aspect of Aikido, film some videos with them, and I'll keep exploring it because it's interesting. But it's not like my top priority or top goal. It's just something I'm curious about, and I make some videos about, and I do some training, and you're gonna see some videos about that. But yeah, that's not really on the top of my list. In what was it, a class B or class C MMA? As I can see, shin pads. Class C, from what I believe in Sweden, is for youth until 18. But yes, it was class B. No ground and pound shin pads and padded gloves. Uh, Next question. Rockstar South. Back in your youth, when you were deciding which martial art to choose to start your journey, was BJJ or Muay Thai an option, or what were the options? BJJ, definitely not, but like Muay Thai, maybe, like boxing. I think it was around. But long story short, I was a peaceful kid. I was drawn to the Eastern mystics and samurai and philosophy. So it was no brainer for me to go for Aikido and kind of that side of martial arts. Uh, the fighting aspect, the fighting in me wasn't there yet. Part of me wanted to learn to fight, and I actually told that to my Aikido instructor, and he discouraged me, which is kind of too bad. Uh, but my instinct wasn't to go, like, because I think back then also too. I may be wrong, but I think it was more like Fight Club, the combat sports arena. Only the kind of people who are already having bar fights would tend to go there more, and I think I wouldn't have fit in. So maybe that's one of the reasons I didn't go to there. But it is what it is. Now I'm working for that right now. Skeptical Fox, nice name. Hey Rokas, I'm currently preparing for my first competitive fight ever in Kudo. Kudo, it's on my list too. That's badass. Do you have any tips from your experience? Well, man, as much as I'd love to talk and give you tips, etc., my experience is still very limited. I don't feel like I'm the person to give tips and advice to other fighters. I will obviously try to do my best and say something, but I want to say it in the most due humility because there's only so much experience I have personally. I don't know if I would have to give you an answer. I'd say I'm not even sure, man. There's so many things I could say, but I don't want to misguide you. I think there are better people with better answers for that. If I were in your place, and if I were to give myself a tip before my first fight, I would say do not rush, uh, do not have some specific expectations, and to just be focused and to do everything as good as I can without rushing and forcing. I think that would have helped me in my first fight. So yeah, but again, I'm not an expert, so I don't want to, you know, uh, expand into that answer too much. But I hope that whatever I said is still valuable. Jack Hansen. Would love to see you respond to old martial art books. Would love to see your opinion on some of the older masters and their works. Here's a suggestion. Actually, so I won't stick around on this one long, but my plan is to compare. I did the video with Jesse Enkamp on comparing old karate versus modern karate tournaments and training. I'm planning to do that into a series. The next one will be with Koan Kicker, comparing Taekwondo, old school versus new school, then Judo, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'll kind of be looking at something similar to that. Lanel Bishop, do you think you injured your spine during BJJ? I believe so. But I'm not entirely sure. There wasn't like a moment of, "Ow, this is fucking painful." It was more like the next day I was like, "Damn." But the thing is, I was training so much, and I was just going all out every day, and there was a lot of tension which was building up in my body, and especially in the hip area. So I think it was getting prone to getting injured. But then I did go to jiu-jitsu class and went all out. I went specifically with the hardest guys. And that's the next day. I did a more light training, kickboxing slash grappling training the next day. And that's the day when I started to feel I'm having some issues. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happened um, during BJJ. Uh, there's a, how did I bring this up? There's a nice sponsored. Oh my God, there's so many questions. There you go. There's a sponsored question, and I want to honor the fact that people are putting their money into it. So I'll bring that up on the screen. Uh, Weston Loomis is saying, "Keep it up, Rokas. Do you practice wrestling or any offensive grappling? If you're in the U.S. ever, it's a great place to practice it." So that's good you're bringing that up because wrestling is definitely high on my list right now. I was training jujitsu and kickboxing primarily for the past time, but jiu-jitsu just tends to go so much on the ground. Many of the guys I'm training with, they're not great at standing grappling, and yeah, I think I'm lacking in that department. So wrestling is high on my list. I feel if I will become much better at wrestling, I will feel much more comfortable doing everything. I won't be as afraid of being taken down, etc. So yes, wrestling is high on my list. Right now, I have the injury, so it would be difficult for me to do it because it's so demanding, physically, and it may be difficult on the spine. But once I'm feel better, I'm planning to put a lot of focus on wrestling. One of my plans right now is to go to SBG Ireland again, at least for a week, to do like an intensive week training camp, and there's some wrestling classes there. I definitely want to go there. I'm planning to start looking for pure wrestling classes in Lithuania, in Vilnius, in the city I live in the area, and learn some pure wrestling. I think wrestling, yeah, would make me into a much better fighter. And in the US, it's difficult for me to go there. It's far, it's expensive to go, but it's still on my list to do it. And if I do go there, I definitely want to do some wrestling. And there's a place I really am looking at and am fond of from the things I see. It's Nathaniel Chalkin is around. He recommended it to me. Judo Flow or J Flow. I don't want to butcher the name right now, but there's a guy who's teaching some of the professional UFC fighters and other fighters like how to add judo into their MMA, like nogi and wrestling. Looks so good. I'd love to do it. So for sure, it's high on my list. HAPS is sending a super sticker. Thank you. I appreciate it. Um, Mad Moon Rabbit saying much love. It's tough to get in there. It is tough, but that's why we do it. So thank you guys for your support. And okay, I'll start getting back into the questions. So Tomislav Karl will do more martial arts YouTuber crossovers and collabs like Ramsey D, Jeff Chan, etc. I guess that's the question. Yeah, will I do? Yeah, for sure. Actually, I do want to go to the States to do as many collabs as possible. Ramsey's in China, so not Ramsey, but Icy Mike, Jeff Chan, Christopher Hine. So my plan is to go to the States and just visit everyone and film videos with them and train with them. So yeah, that's definitely gonna happen. Okay, let's look for more question. What was going through your mind when stepping into the ring? I actually answered this one already, but to make it short again, I got myself excited. I was mixing in between being anxious and excited, and stepping in, I was essentially excited. Um, what's the next country you like to train? What's the next country you like to train next in? What do you think about Capoeira? Capoeira, I don't know much about it, so I will refrain from commenting much on it right now. But I'm planning to do an investigation about it, talk to some people who do know about it, and will get to it. But next country to train, I have a few countries on my list, on my mind. So as I just mentioned, I'm planning to go to SBG Ireland to do at least a week training camp there with the pro guys and do some wrestling and everything. Cage work. They do a lot of cage work, which would be great for me. I'm planning to go to Sweden again to train with Oliver Enkamp. And where else? There's somewhere else I wanted to go to. Well, obviously, I'm planning to go to the States sooner or later. But I had, oh yeah, I'm planning to go to Finland for a week with my BJJ coach. He invited me recently over summer to go and train with him there for a week. I'm planning to do as well. So essentially, I'm just going everywhere where I have an opportunity to train at. Uh, what else do we have? Questions. Dragon Dream. Hi, Rokas. Do you have any new favorite combos after spending time with Oliver Ankamp or even Steven Wonderboy? Anything you want to drill for a while for your repertoire? I haven't met Steven Wonderboy myself. Oliver did, and Jesse did. He's in the States. I'm still planning to visit him. Haven't yet. But my new favorite combos? I like to keep things simple. I love the jab. Starting to get used to using the cross more. Side kicks. I'm starting to fall in love with the front kick. Those are not necessarily combos, but I guess just movements. Uh, but like a combo, I think I'm still at a level where I just want to hone my basics and get good there versus developing some crazy ass combo. So yeah, still work in progress. What else do we have? First of all, salute and respect to you, good sir. Kathy Harmon, same to you. What would you recommend for traditional martial artists that wish to pressure test their art that are over 40 years old? Um, yeah, I could make a whole video about that and talk for a while, but I want to respect everyone's time and the fact that there's a lot of different comments and questions. So I'll just say I usually tend to direct people to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because there are no strikes to the head and uh, you can start slow, especially if it's a good school. And there's plenty of space to test your martial art. Obviously, if it's a striking martial art, then I'd say find for example, a kickboxing school which has a good beginners program, or any combat sports school which has a good beginner program, because that's where people will take care of you. They won't punish you. They won't punch you hard. And there you can engage in a conversation and say, you know what, I want to test my martial art. And we do light sparring. And in a good school, you'll you'll get that opportunity. But again, it depends on the martial art you do. But it's all about finding the right school where beginners are welcomed. And I'm sure you're gonna be fine with that. Is this pre-recorded? No, this is not pre-recorded. This is live. When will you fight the judo guy? I guess I wonder which judo guy you're referring to, but maybe we're talking about Shintaro Higashi. He's in the States. I'm in Europe. Next time I'm in the States, I'm planning to visit him, and I want him to kick my ass and throw me around like a ragdoll. That's high on my list. So I'm hoping that I will pull off a trip to the States this year, probably in autumn, like September or something, because July I have a wedding, a big thing. September, well, I actually probably gonna have my next MMA fight in Sweden. So probably after that would be good to do a US trip. So somewhere in autumn, I'm planning to get thrown around by Shintaro Nagashi. Mr. Omega Free, love your work and good fight. Thank you. Do you find your knowledge Aikido helps or troubles you in MMA? Good question. Both. Um, Knowledge of Aikido doesn't help me much, but I do feel like there's some instincts that I have. I think Aikido helped me somewhat with distance management, with feeling the person, with footwork, but it wasn't like direct one to one. I think it also created a lot of bad tendencies in me, and I think they're already getting out of the system. They're not in my way anymore. But but it took me a while to get rid of some Aikido tendencies which were not good for me. But overall, I think yeah, it did help me feel my body better, or the best part probably was just knowing how to be a good student, just being really attentive, really wanting to learn, really observing what's shown, understanding why it's shown, how it works, and adapting that to myself. I think that skill I developed in Aikido, and that helped me as I continued to train. Um, Combat fanatics. When shelling and boxing, I keep the base of my hands glued to my cheekbones. When it comes to MMA, do you need to hold your hands higher on your face, maybe palms of your hands on your forehead? I'll keep this answer very simple and let you know that I'm not an expert, so I'm not the right person to ask to answer. Sorry, that's the way I think. When do you think you will fight again, Elijah Cottrell? My plan is to fight again as soon as I can, but obviously I still need to deal with the injury, which is probably going to take at least a month. But after that, my intention is to compete as much as I can, to just get used to competition and to challenge myself and to get used to people who really want to kick my ass and to kick their ass meanwhile. So once I'm back from the injury in about a month, I'll start looking for the competitions around, whether it's jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, boxing, MMA. My intention is to go and do everything and to just keep gathering experience. So yes, that's my plan. Uh, what advice for people starting MMA? Again, I'm not an expert, but to give my 2 cents, I just say find a good school which has a good beginners program where people are not being punished for coming in. That will already solve a lot of your problems. You'll get all your answers there. And I'd say just don't overdo it. Don't overtrain. That's my challenge. Just take things one step at a time. Find how many times you can go to train where you will challenge yourself, but you won't kill yourself, and just continue to do that. Nicholas Messina, good to hear from you again. Is there anything you would change going into your next fight training camp wise? Different gym, different training partners, coaches, type of competition? So that's a great question, and I thought a lot about that. So I want to answer this one properly. There's a lot of things I want to change. Um, Starting on, okay, yeah. So I'll expand a little bit here because there's a lot of good things and realizations that came from me after the fight. So I'll admit there are they're not necessarily mistakes per se, but now I consider them as mistakes in my approach to my fight camp uh, for this fight. Uh, I think because in my first fight camp that I did for my first fight and right after preparing for my second fight, which didn't happen because I got injured 2 years ago, I burned myself out. I pushed myself uh, far too much. And then it took me a while to go over the burnout and to get back into training, to start enjoying training again. And I think I enjoyed taking things slowly and training with guys on my level, because beforehand I was mostly training with people who were way beyond my level. So I was always the underdog. I was always getting my ass kicked. And eventually, when I started training with guys of my level, initially that was a challenge, both in jiu-jitsu and kickboxing. But over time, I started to understand how things work and find strategies to deal with them. And with guys on my level, which were my level at the beginning, I started to excel, and I started to be able to overcome most of them, like in kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. And and that was a nice feeling because I'm like, oh look, I'm not the worst guy anymore, and I'm winning, and I'm better than these guys. But so that was good for my confidence, but that was bad for situations like that when I come into the fight and suddenly I'm like, man, this guy is at least equal to me, if not better. So how do I deal with him? I think I became used to dealing with people who are slightly worse than me, and I realized, you know what? I wish I trained more with harder people, with harder opponents. And I did do that a little bit at the end of my fight camp, but I didn't do that nearly as enough because, I'm going to be completely honest here. This channel is all about that. Like you go to a jiu-jitsu class and you do the techniques, and then it's time to roll. And you look around and you're like, this guy's super tough. This guy's huge. That guy, okay, we can go toe to toe with him. And oh, this guy, okay, I can choke him out 10 times. And that thought process usually goes around, at least on some level. And then if you feel tired, or I feel tired, I think that applies to most people. But then it's like, okay, I'm gonna go with the more beginner, just choke him out, rest a little bit. I'm gonna go with this guy who we're going to toe to toe. And then maybe once I'll go with someone who's really badass, I'll get choked out. But you kind of, balance it around. Now I'm thinking my intention is obviously I'll try to do my best not to overdo that. But I want to train with people who are not necessarily like completely just dominating me and period, because there's only so much you learn there. But I want to train with guys who are better than me. And in order to achieve that, I'm thinking about two different strategies. So one is to not avoid the big guys, the bigger guys, and the guys who are better than me, but actually jump on them, like in jiu-jitsu and in kickboxing, to be like, okay, this guy is so tough to roll with. I hate rolling with him. He always gets me. Let's go. Let's go. So I want to choose the bigger adversity versus the lesser adversity. So in jiu-jitsu, I can find those opponents in the gym. In the kickboxing class that I do, it's kind of a closed amateur group where I feel I don't have. There's only one guy who challenges me properly, but the other guys, I'm like, okay, this is easy. So I realized, you know what? I have to get out of there. I have to go to the next, to a different class. I have to have guys who challenge me. I have to have guys who are better than me, because actually also too, I know how I work, and I don't know if this is universal or not, but there's a part of me which has that, where if somebody kicks my ass, and if there's a chance that I could get toe to toe with them, like they kick my ass, but I could get to toe. There's a slight chance that I could beat them. I get obsessed. I'm like, I can't stop until I beat them, because I feel it's within my grasp. And then I start to think a lot about, okay, so what did I do wrong? How can I do this better? And I start looking at videos, asking for feedback, looking for solutions. I want to roll and spar with them again and again until eventually I do overcome them. And I think that's so good. But especially in kickboxing, I haven't had that much lately anymore. So I need to go to the same gym. The gym is awesome where I go to, but to a higher level of class where there are guys who will challenge me at that level. And also to, I'm planning, I still need to test, this, to pressure test this concept, this idea. But I want to go to like proper boxing and go toe to toe with boxing people, because I'm not going to be dominating there because I'm training kickboxing, I'm training jiu-jitsu, I'm training wrestling. I can be better than them because that's the only thing they do. But that's where I want to go. I want to go where they are great at this, and I want to start to try to reach them and level up to them, and be challenged by them. Then I want to go to proper wrestling classes where I will be dominated by wrestling guys because they are great at that, because that's the only thing they do, and I want to get toe to toe with them, and then kickboxing, and then jujitsu. So that's my plan. And so different training partners, different gyms in regards to um, going to places where they're focused on this one thing and they're really good at it. Maybe try different gyms also to just get a more variety of different partners. And also too, I want to travel a bit and go to Ireland, Finland, Sweden, maybe the States if I can. And yeah, just go to places where the level of training is great, and get different training partners. And yeah, obviously naturally I will get different coaches there. And type of competition, yeah, as I mentioned before, I feel I need more competitive experience. So my intention is to just keep jumping on into all the competitions I can, obviously within reason. But go to jiu-jitsu competitions, go to kickboxing, boxing. If there's a competition where I can participate, and I will not just get completely destroyed, but I can at least have some level of uh, competitiveness, I want to go there. So that's my plan. Okay, we have a sponsored uh, comment, which I will get to in a second. Sorry, thank you for your patience. Caleb Clark is asking, how can you bring what is uniquely you to the next match? What fundamentals do you know deep enough to innovate on top of that? Do you have a thought on using modified Aikido to position for angles? That's a hard question because I still consider myself to be very new at all of this. There's so many fundamentals that I still don't know, and that's picking up on what I just said before. That's why I want to go to proper wrestling classes. That's when I go to proper boxing classes because they are much they're probably much more knowledgeable in the fundamentals and how to do them well. Versus when you're learning MMA, there's so many things you can just miss. You're just kind of doing a little bit of this, kind of doing a little bit of this. You kind of try to understand that and this. But then I want to become really good at fundamentals of each game. Boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, cage work, wrestling. Uh, yeah, I want to understand why am I doing things, how do they work, how to do them better. And I'm not there yet. There's so many things I still don't know. So many things I still don't understand precisely. So innovating. Obviously, there's some things I just naturally lean to. Like I started really enjoying the teep. I've started becoming more comfortable with high kicks, kicking into the head, doing sparring, and that works for me because I'm tall and lanky. Using the jab, uh, there are things which just are naturally more working for me because of my body build, and I enjoy it more. I like to do that more. So naturally, those things are what I will continue to develop on. But there's no magic pill that I want to invent or try to figure out. It's just I kept hearing stories again and again that usually that's not the way it works. That doesn't work, and especially not for your like 10, 20 first fights. So, and Aikido, I think that will come in naturally sometimes, but again, I don't think I'm established yet so strongly in fundamentals to be able uh in combat sports fundamentals to be able to modify my Aikido into it. So maybe one day, but I don't think that time came yet. So a few more questions. Fitness for the average Joe, David, or Bina. What did you learn from your last fight? Meaning, what will you try to improve on? I guess I touched upon that quite a bit already, and the answer is I learned there's so many things I learned, but I think the main things is I realized my limitations and my flaws in my training and approach, where I could train better and the things I should focus on more. So it's kind of to become more smarter in my training, to not underestimate my opponent, to improve my cardio even more. I think just roughly uh, summarizing, these are probably the main takeaways. And yeah, so I'll answer a few more questions. So if you have some, feel free to write them. But I think we'll stick around still for more like for 10 minutes more or something like that. So this is your last chances. Nathaniel Chakyan, a friend of mine who is actually one of the representatives of functional Aikido. Uh, Thank you, August, for sharing your journey with us. Thank you, Nathaniel. You helped me out, and you're helping out in my journey. So I appreciate that. Got your T-shirt in the mail yesterday. Till next time, that's awesome. By the way, that is a shout out to the Martial Arts Journey T-shirts there that I released. If you want to check them out, just go to martialartsjourney.com. There's like a custom designed uh, fighter's evolution from a monkey to traditional martial artist to combat sports guy, which represents the journey of going from traditional martial arts to combat sports. If you want to check that out, I think it turned out like into a cool T-shirt. So martialartsjourney.com it's there, and I'm also planning to release even more brand new merch. So great moment to shout out that. Okay, so these are people discussing between themselves. So a couple more last questions. Do you do other combat sports competitions like jiu-jitsu, submission grappling, point, kickboxing, etc., or has it only been MMA so far for you? So again, I mentioned that a little bit. I'll just recap in case some of the people weren't around. In the past, I did four jiu-jitsu competitions, gi and no gi, but that was already like 3 years ago. Other than that, no. The only competitions I did was in my first MMA fight and my second MMA fight, but I think that's a big flaw in my approach. That I should do more competitions and get used to them, get used to facing the adversity more, and uh, and so I'm planning to start jumping into as many. Once I have my injury heals up, I want to jump into as many competitions as possible, which would include point kickboxing, boxing, jiu-jitsu, just whatever is out there. Just give me a chance to compete, and I will. So that's my plan. And what else? Which pro fighter is your biggest inspiration on your MMA journey? Oh, that's a nice question, Weston. Thank you for that. Uh, it depends on what we mean by inspiration. There are definitely guys which I'm looking up to, especially in terms of style, of how they fight and how they approach the understanding of MMA. Israel Adesanya is high on my list. We have a similar build. He loves anime, but yeah, I think he seems like a genius in what he does, and I do like the way he approaches things, and I do want to emulate him to some degree. Uh, I enjoyed. I think the names are starting to get stuck in my head, but Holloway. Holloway is a fighter as well, tall, lanky, one that I enjoy looking at. I want to look into more of John Jones. I haven't spent enough time examining how he works, although I know he's not the traditional fighter. GSP has come into my radar. I want to understand more how he approached the whole fighting game, and also he used the jab a lot, and he had a high IQ, so I want to look at that, analyze a little bit of Conor McGregor. There's one guy from SG Ireland who just won a title in a competition, I think some combat something. Anyway, so it's France Malambo. I trained with him, and I was super inspired by how he takes his MMA game, and I want to examine more of his style as well. Some boxers too. So just like, yeah, I guess I just want to understand it all. I think I'm in a stage where I want to start understanding things on a much deeper level. Like, why do people do things? Like, how do you move your legs? How do you move your head? So I want to, obviously not necessarily during the fight. I think that's not the way to go. Not to be like, oh, during the fight you think about everything, but just get things into my system before. Like beforehand, I enjoyed understanding how things work, but mostly just during training. I was like, okay, tell me how things work. I try them, and I enjoy just playing with them during sparring and trying to figure them out and implement them. But now I feel I suddenly developed an urge to want to understand, to just want to understand things on a deeper level. Like, why do I, why should I step like this? Why should I move my head like this? And why should I do the takedown like this? And just, yeah, just understand the theory behind everything on a much deeper level. And I think so far, I think analyzing fighters and observing them and emulating them and breaking them down is one way to go. And these are some of the guys that I mentioned that I'm looking up to. Gabe Ramos, how much time do you spend watching tapes, studying fights, techniques, strategies, etc.? So that kind of builds up onto what I said. In the past, I don't think I did that enough, but I think I will become obsessed about that, and I'll just drill it and go for it. Especially once now that I'm injured, I can't really train much. Like I'm gonna go to a private boxing class tomorrow. I took one, but I'm like, I'm not even sure if that's a good idea. Hopefully it's going to be fine. But it's just like, yeah, my ability to train is limited right now due to injury. So I think I will double down or triple down or tenfold down on analyzing, studying fights, techniques, strategies. I think that will turn into my hobby. It's like, oh, there's nothing that I should do. What should I do? Like I have some free time. Analyze fights, understand how things work. I want to do that. So yeah. Didn't do that so much in the past, but yes. Any chance you'll visit Shintaro Higashi or Jimmy Pedro's Judo Center? Shintaro Higashi, yes, high on my list. If I manage to pull off a trip to the States later this year, then I will definitely visit him. So Christian Lafuente, How did the weight cut go? Any thoughts or mistakes that you did? The weight cut was fine this time. I only had to drop 3.5 kilos. I started early and I realized weight drops super easily for me. It's difficult for me to gain weight. It's easy to lose weight. I lost the weight earlier than I needed to. Weight cutting was a problem in my first fight. I did miss a bunch of mistakes there, but for my second fight, no, I think it was good. It was easy for me, so that's cool. Andrew Campbell, has anyone from your Aikido days reached out to you to praise your move over to MMA? Oh, that's a good question. Um, ish. Depends on who you specifically refer to as my old Aikido days. Obviously, it's an open question, but um, definitely not the community I was part of as an equal. Like I keep mentioning that I used to train in Switzerland. No, these people, no one reached out. Like especially like from that core group. There's a couple of people that transitioned to as friends, but who also left that community, and we're in contact on this. They're supportive, but that's the thing. That different case from people who were back there back in the day and are still there. No one. My old students, the first generations, no, I think they were too much into the whole Aikido spirit as much as I was back then. But my last generations of students, they're supportive. I don't necessarily get messages from them like, "Oh my God, your MMA fight was awesome" or something, but I know they're supportive. So that's cool enough. Uh, okay, and oh, that's cool. HAPS, Rokas, I'm wearing a martial arts journey T-shirt right now. It was awesome to see positive sportsmanship between you and your opponent. Thank you, chaps. I put a lot of effort into that T-shirt, so I'm really happy to hear that someone is wearing it. So thank you for sharing that with me. Uh, and this is my beautiful soon-to-be wife. In case people didn't know, this is off subject, but anyway, she wrote a heart, and we're getting married soon. So I just wanted to put it out there. There's positive things even when you lose. She still loves me. Okay, last couple questions. Tomislav Karl, have you ever considered that you maybe focused much on getting the conventional stuff right, in the sense of that most MMA people can do what you did to Shadi? Maybe I don't know what I'm saying. It's a complicated question, complicatedly put. Uh, but just to share what pops up for me, I think I'm a big fan of basics, fundamentals. I think they shouldn't be skipped. I think we shouldn't be inventing new stuff until we're like super pros at what we do. So yeah, I'm down to learning the basics. And how's my physical condition today? Better. I'm not. I wasn't very careful once after the fight. I mentioned that before in the live stream, but probably not everybody heard. During before the fight, I was super careful, and then after the fight, I was like, fuck it, this is just gonna heal itself. I don't have to protect myself, and I'm like, oh man, hurts next day more and then more. So I need to start respecting my injury more again. But other than that, I can't. I'm not sleeping. Haven't slept well after the fight, partly because of the pain in the leg, but partly also because my mind is just always racing, and I'm always thinking like, okay, so how should I train from now on, and analyzing fights, analyzing my mistakes. So I think it'll take me still a few days until I'll settle in and I can properly rest. But other than that, as I mentioned, also after the fight, I could have went for another fight. So physically, like my cardio, I think is pretty good. Just need to heal up and get back into training. Uh, just joined. Max is saying, so you may have answered this. Any plans to train at SBG? Yes. SBG Ireland, I already contacted them to go to train at least for a week in end of May or beginning of June to do like an intensive training week, maybe even longer. And I may just keep going back and forth there to train at SBG Ireland and SBG in general in the States. If I'm going to the States, for sure, I will be going there to train. how did your fight feel different to sparring? For example, how different does striking feel when you have to commit full power to some strikes? But that's a good question, and one I did think about. For me, there was a significant difference, and I mentioned that at the beginning of the live stream, but I know people are jumping in and out. Um, I actually regret that I didn't do hard sparring at least a little bit before the fight. I tend to be a big fan of light sparring, just realizing that overall it's better for the body, for the brain, and also for developing creativity and new techniques in your fighting. But I feel like I was much better. Of course, it depends on the opponent, and my opponent was tall, and I later learned that he excels at boxing. So that was a big challenge for us two strikers to deal with each other. But getting punched into the face, it's not like I was like, oh my God, I never experienced this or whatever. But I realized it's been a while since I got punched hard in the face. And since I punched someone else hard in the face, there's a different feeling. There was more overcommitment in my strikes. I was rushing things and forcing them a bit more than I do in sparring. In sparring, I'm more like feeling things out and looking for openings and feinting. And I think just that desire to strike hard and also that knowledge that I'm gonna get strike hard, that did encumber my ability to fight well. So it did feel different from sparring, and that's one of the reasons why I want to compete more and do get a bit more of hard sparring into my training regime as well, to just kind of get used to that, so that my sparring and my fighting, I know there's always going to be a difference, but that wouldn't be just kind of super different anymore. And one more, Max, did your peaceful martial art background affect your ability to get aggressive in the cage? That's a tough question to answer for me. Maybe a little bit, but I'm a peaceful guy. Like in general, I am not like an aggressive guy. I'm pretty good uh, at dealing with my emotions and with mental challenges, whatever. I don't lash out often. I get pissed about some things and I get angry sometimes, but not extremely. So I don't necessarily. I don't know if Aikido necessarily made me even more mellow. But I do have a competitive spirit though. It was always there for me. Whenever somebody beats me, I want to get back at them. I want to win. I want to overcome that obstacle, and I can't settle until I become better than those people who are within my reach to overcome. So I don't know. I don't necessarily think that like my peaceful martial art background affected my ability to get aggressive in the cage. And I'm not even sure like if I necessarily have to get super aggressive. I know that some people think that way, but I'm still questioning that whether you need to get aggressive. I think I personally think as long as you're pressuring and your intent is to do damage, to hit the strikes, to hit the takedowns. I don't know if that's necessarily you need that aggression. So it's a question. Well, okay. So everyone, it's been already an hour and 15 minutes, and I'll wrap things up here. I wanted to just say again, everyone's support means a lot to me. Even here in the comments, I see so much of it, and hearing your positive thoughts and feedback did help me out a lot. Like it helped me realize I'm not the worst, you know, that it's possible. It's just an obstacle that I need to overcome. It's just a thing that happened, uh, and it does define me. That was one of the thoughts I had already in me, but hearing other people say that again and again, it helped me establish that thought in myself more and more, and to realize, okay, you know what, this is not the worst. Like this is a journey. So you guys are part of that journey. You guys are directly impacting my journey, and most of you are doing that in a positive way. So I wanted to say thank you for that and to appreciate it. And just for the end, I'll bring up a couple more uh, last comments from you guys. So Weston, you asked some nice questions. Thank you. Thank you for a really interesting live chat, Rokas. Your journey has been inspiring to so many of us. We'd all love to see your videos, your training when you start again. Thank you. I appreciate hearing that, and I'll do my best to keep posting, and I will keep posting, and I will keep training, and I'll update you, everyone. Um, and yeah, lots of positive comments again on the site. Um, cool, cool. So, okay, I don't want to become like, oh, look at all these comments and look how cool and supportive everyone is. You are, guys, but I don't want to, make it braggy. So just thank you, everyone. So yeah, if you haven't seen the fight, check it out. And if you want to check out the T-shirt, I'm pretty proud of it. Go to martialartsjourney.com and check it out. Don't necessarily have to buy it. But thank you again, everyone. I'll go rest now. Tomorrow I have a private boxing class. Hope I'll start working on head movement and fixing my mistakes one by one, and we're gonna get better. So, thank you again, everyone. And as always, keep owning your journey. Oh, wrong camera.